very beginning anthropology, where Hegel tries to develop how human mind emerges out of this immersion into animal feeling and so on. He has there wonderful 20 pages of notes reconstructed afterwards from his improvisations at his lecture course about how madness is inherent there, and how the whole then of civilized mind, language is a desperate attempt to contain this madness. We don't have time to go into this. What you mentioned about historicizing and so on, may I make a brief remark which always fascinated me? What I found always so fascinating with so-called like deconstructionist, postmodern, and so on, is how selective they are in their historicizing. Like, for example, Wagner, Nietzsche. Richard Wagner is over-historicized, you know. You look at Parsifal, of course, the wound is historically decoded as syphilis. Every statement of Wagner is put in context to prove Wagner, Hitler, and so on. But then we get to Nietzsche, and it's unbelievable how the way postmodernists like Nietzsche redeem Nietzsche is by... we tend to forget that when Nietzsche talked about master-slave, it totally disappeared from our view how deeply involved Nietzsche was in political happenings of his day with, to put it clearly, very reactionary political attitudes. For example, the nightmare which haunted Nietzsche was the Paris Commune. This was for him the ultimate slave rebellion. He even believed the rumor, which afterwards proved false, that the rebels of Paris Commune are burning Louvre, whatever. That was, so again, it's interesting how if you, for example, Deleuze and so on, Nietzsche is totally with all others, you know, you look at every reference to the historical context to prove whatever. Nietzsche, okay, but we don't have time for this. Let's go to that moment. I'm so sorry we don't have time to go more into it. You know, my paradox would be the following one, and we agree here more than it may appear. When I say atheism, paradoxic, what I try to assert is, and we'll try to be precise here, atheism as a moment in divine life itself. What I'm totally opposed to is this simplistic, stupid Feuerbach reading of Christianity as the incarnation of Christ means that really God becomes man, but in this stupid sense that, you know, humanity is the truth of God. We just have to accept that God was our fantasy and so on. I agree with you. I totally reject it. What I found so fascinating in this story, Father, have you forsaken me, and so on. Okay, you may find it before. I know all these references. But again, the point is that God is saying it here. And I had 3 years ago an interesting debate in Vienna with some bishops even, and I asked them a simple, stupid, vulgar question. I like these stupid questions which are embarrassing. When Christ says, Father, why have you forsaken me? Is he bluffing or does he mean it seriously? If he is bluffing, that is to say secretly he knows, that's only the stage show to impress the humans, I will join my death happily there. If he knows this and he's just bluffing, then it's a fake. We are in Gnosticism and so on. But if it's serious, then literally for a moment God is lost for himself. Like, you know, there is kind of a split in God, which is God, you know, then the consequences are radical here. And here I tempt to agree, this is the book that I'm writing now, purely theological book, Hegel, Christianity. My starting point is a wonderful slip of tongue mistake by Hegel. You know, what is the distinction between what was the theological cause, superficially at least, which triggered in 4th century or when 50 later, the split between Orthodox Eastern Church and Western Christianity. It's this, how do you call it, the question of the Son and the Holy Spirit. No? For the Orthodox, where does the Holy Spirit originate from? For the Orthodox, it's only from the Father. Both Son and Holy Spirit emanate only from the Father. For Western Christians, it's from Father and Son together. The East wanted the absolute, as they put it, the theologists, to maintain the absolute monarchy of the Father. Now, Hegel does something incredible. It's a truly Freudian slip. When he reports on this, he makes a mistake. He says that the distinction is that for the Orthodox, the Holy Spirit originates from Father and Son, and for us in the West, only from the Son. I agree with Hegel. That's my point. My reading is that nonetheless Hegel is right when the point is what dies on the cross. Hegel's thesis is not the Son. It's not that God's representative dies, and that what dies on the cross is Father himself. It's not simply that this would be the pagan reading, and if you accept this reading, then Christianity is just another of these old, boring, Osiris, stupid stories. From time to time, God sends a messenger. This messenger dies, returns, comes again. Christianity is not this. It's a one-time event. And what dies is the old God himself. And which is why we have the Holy Spirit, which is something totally unique. So, again, I agree with you, we don't have that. Okay, speaking about now, when you mention these jokes and so on, let me tell you a detail. I'm here very personal at two levels. First, recently a wonderful book was published with, okay, at least it's good as a collection, Kierkegaard and humor. Where they pointed how for Kierkegaard also humor was crucial, not in the simple sense you have to be popular and to introduce Christianity, blah, blah, but Kierkegaard has this tremendous vision of Christianity as a comedy. Not comedy in the simple sense of Dante, Divina Commedia. Comedy is what ends well. But in a more radical sense that incarnation, embodiment, it's a comical event. Kierkegaard has this wonderful idea that imagine fanfare, king is coming, and then, you know, this stupid elementary comical scene. And then instead of a king entering, when trumpets announce it, people looking, a small dog enters, no? Kierkegaard says, my God, this is incarnation. You expect a big God, you get an ordinary guy there. That this gap between Christ as the poor ordinary guy and divinity, it's a comical gap. And I think this is what reactionary fundamentalists miss. The problem for me with Mel Gibson's Passion is that he misses the joke of Christianity, which is why it's a pagan film, I think. Okay, another thing is that, of course, it's the greatest monument to Southern California sadomaso gay community. No, but that's another story. No, okay, but what I'm saying is that another very personal moment here for me about jokes is that it's precisely my own political experience. In ex-Yugoslavia, you know, the terrible civil war in the first half of the 90s, you remember, my God, 300,000 people killed in Europe, where people, I don't know why, didn't expect it, as if Europeans are not even worse, no? But what I'm saying is that what traumatized me is the progressive, absolutely progressive, I claim, role of dirty political racist jokes. In what sense? In old Yugoslavia, you know, 5, 6 republics, nations, ethnic groups, whatever you call them, each was, of course, in the racist imaginary identified with a certain feature. Like we Slovenes were misers, Montenegro people were lazy, Bosnians were this kind of a cunning, sexually obsessed, and so on. And you know how this functioned? It didn't function in a racist way. We were not telling jokes about others. When I met my Serb, Bosnian, Montenegro friends, I told them joke about, it was more a kind of a solidary exchange of obscenities. Like, I tell you my dirty, and this means we are above this for me. Disgusting, politically correct, oh, I admire your food, your rituals, this is for me. No, I want to hear the dirty jokes from you, no? And a negative proof of this, incredible, is that from early 80s onwards, when ethnic tensions started to explode, very interesting, these jokes disappeared. This is for me a kind of absolute negative proof that they played. I think, again, they were not racist jokes in the sense of making, it was just, you know, isn't this also your elementary experience? If you meet a person of another race, orientation, whatever. As long as you play this game, ooh, I respect you, blah, 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 that's for me repressed racism. Only when you go at this level of, how to put it, exchanging obscenities, you are there. You are truly a friend where you do that. Now you will ask me, but how do you know that this is not nonetheless, it can be misinterpreted as a racism or scoff, but you have to take that risk. That's the leap of faith, how should I put it, no? And there is a wonderful logic of these jokes. For example, we Slovenes are misers in our own perspective. No, the standard Slovene joke, I don't know,